Hey everyone, we'll get started here. Can you hear me okay? Go ahead and put your name and district or where you're from into the chat window. Okay everyone, welcome. This is our monthly district advisor update. Let me start going through the list here. As for the advisor validation website, we've been, in the last month, we've put out a few little bug fixes to the student lookup ID. We added the NSSRS data to the enrollment lookup. Reactivated another old error code, 439, that uses graduation cohort data. So I know a lot of districts had at least one error on that, so you may want to check into that. Check on the advisor validation website, see if you have an error 439 showing now. Most of this has not changed from last month. We are still working on adding the new roles for FRL discipline access. We are adding more GCAT style reports. And I have not gotten started yet on building some of the overnight data there, like endorsements and CTE participants, but hopefully that will happen this month. The dashboard, I've been working on some of that this month. We fixed the issue with the double login, and I'm in the middle of activating the attendance data. I believe I have a building now, but I still need to do some fixes on the attendance and demographic data. What we have been spending a lot of time on is with the EdFi 3.1 upgrade and the sandboxes for the 1920 school year. We still don't have those posted yet. This is really something for the vendors, not something that the districts would typically interact with. But there is the vendor resources site. We'll have some documentation on it, including a changes document that we will be continuing to add to. So I think that document does have some things that are interesting for the district. So I wanted to cover a couple of the highlights here. We don't have it posted yet, but we will, like I said, get that posted as soon as we get the sandbox built and running. Last year, you may remember that we introduced this student education organization demographics extension so that districts could collect demographics and not overwrite other districts. That is now under 3.1 part of the core EdFi thing. So that is now called Student Education Organization Association. For districts, you shouldn't really see anything happen there. It's basically just replacing a core thing that replaces our extension. FRL, we will be collecting like a program with start and end dates so that you could say that a student did not have FRL between these dates, and then after this date, the student has has free lunch or reduced price lunch.
This will help us when it comes to the October fall membership, October 1 fall membership account, so we'll know exactly what the free reduced lunch status was on October 1, and that if it changes after October 1, it won't inadvertently change their status for when we pull fall membership and free reduced lunch counts.
Now, I don't know that all vendors would necessarily support reporting it this way, but it's definitely a recommendation. Technically, it's, yeah. I mean, yes, they must report the FRL in this program field. Yeah. But we would encourage, yeah, vendors to be able to support sending multiple records for students with different dates. The other big extension that we built for this year that is now replaced by a piece of core Ed5 is our calendar. Now, the calendar in the new Ed5 product is formatted differently than ours. We think it can still collect the same data. It's just looks a little different. Right now, in our extension, we have a calendar, and within that calendar, you have to reference all of the calendar date events that occur. So when you're sending up calendar data, it's really long. Within each calendar, there's like, 180 events that say this day was instructional, this day was instructional, this day was instructional. So it kind of works backwards in Ed 531, in that you are just reporting calendar dates, and those calendar dates can be attached to one calendar or one or more calendars.
The calendar date has a reference to the calendar instead of the calendar having a reference to the calendar date.
So the same structure kind of still applies. You can have multiple calendars with different, to support different tracks. One thing that we are changing that would probably affect how you have to report your data is that we will just be collecting instructional duration as an extension on the calendar date. So that means we no longer care about, you have to report 2 events on a day and 1 day and say, 0.5 of it was instructional and that counts as in session, and 0.5 of it was weather day and that doesn't count. And we're no more confusion about what type of events count and which don't. All we collect is a single number that says on this date in this calendar, how much of that day was instructional time, 0, 1.0, 0.5, whatever. So we think that'll be a little bit simpler, easier to fit in with all the different vendors' calendar models. There's still some tweaks we may be making to try to simplify things, other ideas for extensions, anything that our program people might come up with that we just need to collect new for 1920. So,
and yeah, there is one change to special education that I can't remember if we talked about last month. Instead of special education percentage, that was an extension that we had made. We are moving to a couple of core fields, which will help us with our federal reporting. The 2 core fields will actually be the total number of weekly hours a student spends in special education and the total number of weekly hours that the school they're assigned to is in session. And the intention for that is to determine the SPED percentage from those 2 numbers. So that will take a little bit of getting used to. Again, this was how CORE collected the information. And with some of the reporting that we're doing, we're trying to, as much as possible, move our collections back to the Ed5 core. So instead of you saying, oh, it's 2%, you'll say, okay, they spend 1 hour a week in special education, and the regular school week is, 30 hours. and it'll make that calculation for you.
Yeah, I hope that.
Or we will make the calculation here from that information.
I think those definitions are a little easier to understand too than our current special ed percentage definitions.
And obviously, you know, we're going to have to work on what the school one is based upon the kind of student. We'll probably have to make some adjustments to the Who Reports What document to reflect, in particular, what to put in the denominator or that number of school hours. For your regular kid who's just in a school, that could probably be done on a school-wide basis, but it's really that number of hours is almost becomes on a calendar basis. You know, what is that calendar? What calendar are they in? How many school hours there are? So we'll have to do some discussion here and then provide some additional clarity on that probably at the data conference.
Yeah, that's more about the time that we'll be looking at getting the Who Reports What and data elements documents ready for 1920. Right now, we're really just focusing on the vendor documentation. Amy is asking, what if the student is not served weekly, monthly, or every other week?
That's something we will discuss about providing additional guidance on.
Okay.
So that will be upcoming.
Awesome.
There's also the change to LEP. Okay.
I get all that too much. Anyway, again, I've copied some notes from before about our focus on attendance. Just, you know, we're having discussions with districts and going over the different ways to cover the attendance data. You know, some of the things we've been discussing is, you know, how to use your multiple calendar tracks in your SIS, but also setting part-time students FTE to cover them to make their ADA and ADM math work out if you are not able to place them in a, you know, one day a week calendar or something like that. Technically, there's also calendars with no dates, since otherwise if you place a student in a calendar with instructional days, then we are taking attendance on that student by default. And as long as that student is enrolled during those instructional days. You can put a student in a calendar, but if you enroll them and then exit them immediately before the calendar starts, then obviously they don't count. So yeah, you know, we've had some meetings with PowerSchool and Infinite Campus about this. They're making some fixes on how their data is being reported. I assume hopefully everyone saw what went out in the bulletin though after we took this to some of the NDE teams about what are the requirements for this. The answer we got back is that actually the state rule says that attendance is required for all students, and that's not the guidance we were giving before. So we realized that that is a challenge and maybe not totally feasible for everyone, especially this school year. So, you know, we just encourage you to report it the best you can. You know, if there was any people who wanted to change the rules, obviously that's not going to happen before the end of the school year. So technically that's a requirement, but, you know, we'll just keep working with everyone to try to make it as easy as possible to report as much attendance and absence data as we can. We are also going to update the Who Reports What document. It's sitting with me right now just to do some review on it. Probably by the end of this week, we will update the Who Reports What out on our Advisor Resources website. Any questions about the 3.1 update or attendance data so far. If you want to say something out loud, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. All right, well, glad everyone had time to digest that. Again, focusing on course sections, most of these notes were here last month. We have started to look, I've been running a query to look for schools that have at least one student enrolled, but don't have any students in a section anywhere in the school. So we just started to look at that. Maybe in the near future, we may be working with VSUs probably to start checking on schools that aren't reporting that data. While that data isn't required until the end of the year, it's something that, you know, could have been sent up in the fall. And so we'd be curious why schools wouldn't have any course section enrollments yet. So yeah, we'll begin to follow up on that in the near future. Again, just a reminder, the courses reports have been updated. Course reports use section data, and only the grade details report uses actual grade data. And grades is separate data from course transcripts. So we don't have any course transcript reports. Quick vendor status updates. I know it sounds like Infinite Campus has released a change that is enabling some additional calendar tracks to be created. I was just working with OPS to try to test some of those. Michelle or John, do you have anything to add on that?
No, we've got a new email, Max. Thanks for your help, and Joyce. Got a couple other districts that we're working with just to make sure we give them the right information for the end result we need. So thank you.
Okay. In Power School, there's still fixes going out with every release. I believe they are looking at starting the discipline data sync soon, maybe at the end of April or into May. Amy, do you want to add anything else to that?
We're actually hoping for discipline syncing to be end of March or end of April. So hopefully we don't get into the May. So, and then yes, there was a big, if you're on 12, there was a big 12 just core release that came out, and then a state release that came out at the end of March as well that's fixing things. There was a lot of just issues with grades getting stuck at some of our districts. So that was the big fix. If you still see that error that tells you need to restart your server, it's not necessary. Your Power School will continue to work as is. But if you don't like seeing that error, yeah, restarting your Power School server will indeed make it go away. So just something that didn't get right when they put out the state releases and didn't get updated. And I think that's all I've got.
All right, thank you. I think that's all the new business with the vendors. So that's all I have on the schedule here. Does anyone else have any questions or things they want to comment about?
Max, it's Ellie. Just a quick question. I had a district call this morning, and if I remember correctly, seeing in the bulletin, was there recently a flag or an error turned on that it was once again going to flag those students that didn't have an exit record from last year?
Yeah, the Error 439 is related to that. It's basically high school students who were in your cohort last year, I think, who are not, who did not graduate and or are not showing up in your enrollment this year.
Okay, so my question is, obviously the audit window for the 17-18 school year is not open, and I don't think it's expected to be open at all again this year. So in their example, it was a foreign exchange student, and for whatever reason, their exit record didn't get sent up at the end of last year. So obviously the exit record would need to go into NSSRS. Do they need to just put in a JITBIT ticket for that?
Ellie, this is Jenny. To get a request to make that change in those exit records, they need to submit a CDC graduation cohort request.
Okay, so if it's a high
And
school
they'll-
student, that's how they'll have to
Right.
do it.
They would tell us the student what enrollment record needs to be put up, and we'll review those, and we will make those changes for them.
Okay. What about if it's not a high school student?
That error only should be running on 9th through 12th graders.
Okay.
Yeah, it shouldn't be,
Okay,
but
so
they
it
can
shouldn't.
still request to the request to submit data late if they need an exit record put
Okay.
in for last. Yeah, we've gotten 20, 30 of those already in the last couple days.
Okay.
So we'll work on them as soon as we can. It does take a little time to prepare
Okay.
the record, load it for them, but send them our way.
Will there be a way in the future for NWA MAP to get student rosters from Advisor? I believe that is what they are already working on
Yeah.
with TestWiz here. That's what I was referring to in the vendor updates here. They have been testing pulling Advisor data directly out to fill the roster data for just for MAP, I guess, or
Well, yeah.
yeah, it wouldn't
We're
be
not
the
working
statewide.
on. What is it?
Yeah. Well, for MAP, it, as far as I know, is still kind of in a testing phase. Some districts, they're having trouble with some of the data they're pulling. So I don't know that it's turned on for everyone yet, but
Right. Some of the issues they're having is like, for example, somehow, I guess, like if you have a science teacher, they want to make sure that that group of kids is with the science teacher. It's kind of like if you have different teachers assigned to different group of kids, that's not, because they're just sitting self-contained classroom, that's not getting identified. At least that's kind of what I'm hearing from a couple of districts. So I don't know if that's strictly like, if that's the TestWiz, if that's an issue with that, or if
yeah,
or if there's
yeah,
something.
I mean, sorry.
Go ahead. No, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You know, just with the way our course codes work,
Right.
that may not work out well for them. So there may be some options to work around that, or you know, maybe it's something where TestWiz will have to take some data automatically, but some data might still have to be filled in manually. But yeah, I know that, yeah, we haven't worked that out yet fully, so.
Those are just the questions I've gotten, and yeah, kind of my same response that you just gave, Max. Thanks.
And yeah, hopefully we'll talk to NWA about it, or Certica, in the near future. All right, anything else?
Kind of a reminder, there is a poll going tomorrow morning for NWA. It starts our weekly polls of data for NWA, and we're resending rosters on a weekly basis through about the end of April. I can't remember if the data is coming out of Advisor or 9. I think it's coming out either the 9 or 10 a.m. And that's just to kind of keep NWA updated as far as changes in kids' locations.
And I guess I should mention I'm not sure where this has been communicated. I think it's in the bulletin already. The data conference is coming up at the end of April. Let's see, where is that webpage? Events. There we go. Data conference, April 29th and 30th.
The focus is on data again and on advisors, so
I think we specifically are aiming for the first day to be advisor heavy, and the second day more from other program people at NDE. So definitely the people on this call would be the kind of people who would probably be attending.
but there will be things on the second day for advisor also, and for the people on this call, not just the first day.
And there are links down here for registration. So come out to our website or follow the link in the bulletin. All right, I think that's everything we're going to cover this month. Thanks, everyone. I believe our next meeting is April 10th. So see you next time.